right, guys, what is up? Welcome back to the Transparency. Idaho4. This is the new doc drop part 2. Thank you guys for joining us earlier. Had a great crowd in here. We're going to get after it here with part 2. In case you ever need to feel like you have to defend yourself one day, or you want to be on the offense, you guys can go pick up your own exhibit stickers here. And you can find those on Amazon. So those of you that need these, go on over to Amazon. Okay. All right. It is Wednesday all day today, the 8th. Let's see. We did okay. I have to make a little note. Well, we're going to go ahead and start. Starting where we left off on. This is the state's exhibit 4S4. Okay. And again, this is the rebuttal expert disclosures. So like what that means is the state is saying, that's what this big old bad 116 pages. The state, these are their exhibits that are the rebuttal to what the defense's experts were going to say. This was going to be their rebuttal. So how it would look is the state goes first. They present their case. They would have expert testimony. Okay. After somebody gives a direct examination, then Ann Taylor would cross-examine them. Then they could redirect. And then they would say, okay, we're going on to our next witness, so on and so forth with all the witnesses. Then the state would rest. Okay. Then Ann Taylor, the defense, would have the opportunity, if they chose to, and in this case, they were going to put on a defense. They were going to be calling people to the stand. And some of them would be fact witnesses. Some of them would be what they call like lay witnesses. And then you get to these experts. And so Ann Taylor was planning on calling experts. So what would happen is Ann Taylor, when it's her turn to put on a case, and she would call to the stand her experts, then the state would cross-examine them, and then Ann Taylor would have a chance to redirect them. And then when the defense would rest its case, the state then can bring on rebuttal witnesses to rebut what any expert testified to. And so then the state could go again and call some witnesses, and this would be rebuttal testimony up against, whatever Cyree got on the stand to say. Okay. Or Tom, anybody that's an expert. So here, the Barnharts and Jeffrey Tanzola would have been potential expert rebuttal witnesses for the state. But the issue that the state is basically saying is what the hell is going on? These experts didn't disclose anything that they're going to be talking about. And they're not comporting with the rules of evidence. So Rule 16, which means the state cannot and is not required to disclose rebuttal testimony because you guys didn't lay out what you're even going to be talking about. It's like, hey, how does that feel? Because that's exactly what your experts did to the defense. And I'm over here like, this just needs to stop. This stuff needs to be pointed out. As much as these lawyers treat this shit like a game, the judges allow this shit. Okay? It's like a referee or like an umpire. Call balls and strikes, call the fouls. Like when you see that a referee is taking over the game and it's like, dude, this isn't fun. When you look up at the scoreboard and you see that UCLA has been called for, 14 team fouls and Duke only 5. Like, come on. Like, what's going on here? So, and in my opinion, and I don't think it's going to be far off from a lot of yours, is that we got to witness, at least I felt, Judge was not handicapping the defense, right? But he was just giving everybody the same opportunities. When it got to Boise, that is not what I saw. I did not see Hippler calling balls and strikes fairly. Again, that's my opinion. So that's the breakdown of how the whole, like what we're dealing with when we're breaking down these new documents. These have to do with the state saying that the defense's disclosures are not adequate. And so then it's handicapping us because we have to turn in rebuttal reports, and we can't do that because Ann Taylor's experts aren't saying what they're going to be testifying to. And again, I just find that hard to believe. So, and then like, let's say even if it's the truth, well, how does it feel? Because that's exactly what Ann Taylor was saying from jump, that first of all, they're not even getting in expert disclosures. And then they want to rebut something that we're not calling a toxicology person to the stand. So why would they have anybody that's going to be a rebuttal? We're not calling anybody to the stand that's going to be an expert in toxicology. And that's what we're going to kind of get into right here in this second half here. So again, the state says, listen, in response to the defendant's expert disclosures for Kevin Peden, so we just did Carol, now it's Kevin's turn, and in addition to the previously disclosed testimony, the state may call Jeffrey, Heather, or Jared as expert witnesses to respond, rebut, and testify as follows. So overall, Peden's disclosure does not contain any substantive opinions to rebut. They said the same thing about Cyray and Slavinsky. So now we're on to the state's claiming the same thing, like Carol doesn't even have an opinion, and now Kevin, he doesn't really have an opinion. And I'm over here like, what? Yeah, they do. They have an opinion about the devices. They have an opinion about what. So they're like, you need to be more specific. Okay. And so here it is, which is Kevin Peden's disclosure. There's no facts or data for any opinions other than references to eraser file discussed below. In order to sufficiently rebut this disclosure, our experts would need the following information as noted. So number one is the digital program, software, browser, and application general use and purpose. Number two is the forensic examinations and tools used by examiners. Now, those tools we're talking about is like the gray key tools, like depending on Axiom, Celebrite, those are called tools. So to sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding what specifically is he going to testify about regarding forensic examinations. Number two, his opinion on how a forensic examination should be conducted. 3, tools he's going to testify about were used and by which examiners. 4, how he believes the tools function. 5, what opinions he will offer. Now, the third-party digital data. This is what I told you guys right there at the end of the first show. I said we're going to get into the Pedens, specifically Kevin, was going to talk about third-party digital data. Okay. To sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding his definition of third-party digital data. Excuse me? 2, does this include data from third-party applications and or software? 3, which devices? 4, which applications or software does he plan on testifying about? 5, what opinions he will offer. 4, life patterns based on digital usage as appropriate to meet the state's evidence. To sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding what specific life patterns. 2, based on what digital usage. 3, what device and specifically what usage. 4, what opinions he will offer. You guys, this is... These are the same things that Ann Taylor was saying that... Because remember, the burden is on the state. And she's over here like, what are you guys testifying to? What are your opinions? There's no opinions here, right? Are you just a fact witness? What is your opinion about what the data is saying? Understand? You know, you don't just say, hey, I downloaded so-and-so's phone, then I went through it, and that's what I did in this case. What are they testifying to? And the big thing is that Michael Douglas was going to have to testify to that he could not find a link between any of the victims' digitals to Brian Koberger. Like their social medias, there's no connection. None. Zero. Okay. They were gonna be talking about, again, this big thing with this. Remember at the end, Ann Taylor wanted to be able to test that laptop. She wanted to run her own test on that. So the state's experts will testify erasers were found on 11/16/2022, but the experts couldn't find any prefetch associated with it being run. So this artifact may be associated to a virus scan that was run on 11/16. Well, that's what the state's experts are testifying to. So they're basically saying, this is what we're testifying to. Are you trying to rebut this? And if so, what are you rebutting? Are you basically saying that you don't think that this happened? Okay. And see, since we're going backwards, we don't get to see right now. We will at some point. We need the report in chronological order how it all happened. Like here, this is our expert disclosures. Okay, because then what normally happens is it's like, hey, this is what these experts are going to say. They're going to say that this phone shut off, and then think about what they did in. I'm just going to throw out the Delphi case. Okay. They totally missed that the phone had earplugs or the aux cord was plugged into, okay? Showing that somebody had to have handled that phone after, human hands. And it was well after 4 o'clock, okay? 4 p.m. And it happened again sometime around like 10 something p.m. And that would be like, that's a huge find, okay? And what I didn't understand is why did the guy even have to do any Google searching? Because if there were these expert disclosures and rebuttals and blah blah blah, like did he not know that Stacey Aldridge, what she was going to be testifying to? You know what I mean? And so here it's like there would be no surprises. And I'm kind of wondering to myself, like, why didn't that happen in Delphi? How is this dude in Delphi going and Googling something and then coming out and getting on the stand and saying, well, if the phone got wet, it could cause that twice at this time, and then pulling out at this time, and just happens to be right after like the phone starts ringing? Because remember back in the day when you had an iPhone and you put the jack in, it would silence then the ring, because then the ring is going to go through your ear, going to go through your earbuds. We used to do that all the time to silence your phone. So anyways, this was in January of 2025 that they were going back and forth with this, by the way. The trial was in August. So again, there's that use of the VPN. So the state's experts will testify that VPNs can be used for a variety of reasons to include masking the IP address. Masking the IP address can make yourself anonymous, So who is using the internet and the location where the internet is being accessed from. It is the state's experts' opinions. This is why the VPN was used in this case. This can also be used as anti-forensics. So what are you guys going to say? We believe that a VPN was used in this case to mask the location where the internet is being accessed from. So if we're going to rebut, like if you guys are going to claim something else, then we need to know what you're going to be claiming. And I'm over here just like, now I know what Ann Taylor meant when she's like, Your Honor, they are disclosing in their rebuttal filing, they're making more disclosures that weren't even made in their expert disclosures. Did you see that example right there? This is what our expert's going to be testifying to why a VPN was used. Well, you have no idea why Brian Culver used the VPN. What your expert can testify to are when you use a VPN, what does that mean? You can't say Brian Culver used a VPN for this reason. That would get objected to like that because are you Brian Culver? Did Brian Culver ever tell you this? You know what I mean? Like that's not what you can, sorry, but that's not an expert opinion. An expert opinion is given when you're breaking down like, this is what it's for. This is what it can be used for. So I'm like but it could also be used for this, this, and this. And then you could say, well, my expert opinion on why he used it like this, okay, is why. Why would you say that that's your expert opinion that he's using it because of X, Y, and Z? And I would just love to know what makes you lean one way or the other. People use VPNs all the time. Like, all the time. So, also, then I was talking about that. Hold on. So to sufficiently rebut the state's needs information regarding how the encrypting of the data prevents the slowing down of internet speeds with internet service providers. So there was clearly some disclosure made. And then number 2 is what factual basis does Kevin have to indicate that the VPN in this case was used for preventing the slowdown of internet speeds in this case? And I'm just like, well, what's the state's expert on why he's trying to say why a VPN would be used? The fuck are you what are you guys talking about? Yeah, I think y'all are just giving your opinions here, aren't you? What factual basis? Look at this shit. What factual basis does he have to indicate that the VPN was used for this? What factual basis Peden has to indicate that the VPN was used for unblocking streaming content in this case? When I saw that, I was like, actually, that makes a lot of sense if he was on WSU's server. Right? And after I saw what they had to sign, and you're basically giving your privacy away if you use that server. Well, I don't want to use that server. So they can, or I'm going to go do it. When I saw what they could technically do by living in that apartment, I was like, that's crazy. You're like giving away all your privacy rights, all of it. Number 4 here is what factual basis Peden has to indicate that the VPN was used for preventing data interception from third-party software and applications in this case? Because that's what they do. You guys, do you know how when you're using your phone and you're talking about something and all of a sudden you start getting crazy ads popping up, or like it's like they're listening to you. Your phone it's a smartphone, okay? And then you start getting emails from like shit that you literally were just talking about. And then you're wondering yourself, well, dude, I was just thinking that, but I don't even think I said that out loud. So so to sit here and say like, what factual basis do I know? How I would look at it is like a VPN is just not used for what you're trying to say. Your narrative is you want to push this narrative about why a VPN was used, and it's like making it seem like that's the only reason that you could use a VPN. And if this guy wants to testify that you could use, there's so many reasons why you would use a VPN, not just that one. You know? Yeah, I just, so whatever. But it's like, what factual basis? Like, what? Who has facts here? What facts? No. The only factual basis we would get is if we asked Brian Kober why the fuck he used a VPN. Like, let's be real. Now, what factual basis does Peden have to indicate that the VPN was used for accessing public Wi-Fi hotspots safely in this case? What does safely mean in regards to accessing public Wi-Fi hotspots? You guys, these are all valid reasons why you would use a VPN. And if he's specializing and going into school into cloud-based forensics, I would think he knows that, hey, you have no idea how your phone's communicating with everything, and how when you wonder when you get hacked or when all of a sudden people are stealing people's identity, what do you have in your phone? We have everything in our phones. Everything. That's why back in the day when people would be like, you have to get a search warrant for your house, your phone is now like your house. You have way more things in your phone than you ever have in your house now, as far as privacy would be a concern. What the heck do you have in your house right now that's private? So this basically, without us even having the report, do you guys see what Peden was going to be arguing? He was going to be saying, these are all the reasons that a VPN could have been used in this case because of this. And it's like, well, why do you think that? Well, probably depending on what Brian had on his device would probably lend you to have, well, this is normally used with this, and he had that on his app. He had that on his phone. I'm guessing things like that. Who knows? But why do you believe that he was he's listing 5 things here. The state is claiming one thing that this VPN was used for, and it was used to hide his location. What? Excuse me? Okay. Well, then the state says the use of incognito browsing. You guys can be an incognito in this. You guys know that with YouTube. You won't be able to chat, but if you went incognito, you could, I think a big thing right now is if you're on Spaces on Twitter, you can go incognito, I think, and be able to listen to the Spaces and people wouldn't know who you were. Something like that. Yeah. So number 7 here is use of incognito browsers to keep user activity private and to protect personal information. So the state's experts will testify people use incognito browsers to keep user activity private and to protect personal information. Basically alluding to the fact that you don't need to use a VPN if you want to keep your user activity private and to protect personal information. You can just use the incognito browsers. Okay. So the state's experts will testify incognito browsers can be used to mask identity and not leave a browser history. This would be a form of anti-forensics. Well, to sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding 1, the context, 2, which device or devices is he referencing in regards to the use of incognito browsers, 3, what factual basis does he have to indicate that incognito browsers were used for keeping user activity private and to protect personal information in this case? Again, what it seems to me is that Mr. Kevin Peden and his wife, they were basically here, this is what the state's experts are claiming. And kind of Ann Taylor kind of could probably figure that they're going to try to claim X, Y, and Z, right? So I'm going to go out and find experts that, hey, what are all the reasons available as to why one would use a VPN? Being incognito browser, like what's, especially, I don't know if her and Brian are talking and she asks him, hey, Brian, why are we using a VPN? Just curious. Maybe Brian saw some of the disclosures by the state and he's like, wait, what? That's not why, that's not true at all. I was doing X, Y, and Z, you know? So, and then we have the Google Maps cache file regarding storing portions of map data such as tiles or of locations, searches, search suggestions, reviews, and recent directions. The state's experts will testify the Google Maps cache file stores portions of map data such as tiles of locations, searchers, search suggestions, review, and recent directions. And I'm just like, well, okay, was that disclosure not made in your expert disclosure? Like, why are you stating this? Well, that's why Ann Taylor was like, they're like making new declarations within their rebuttal. So to sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding the context, the relevance to this case. What device or devices are they referring to as Google Maps? So now we move on from the Pedens and we get to go to Josiah Roloff. Josiah. To the extent Josiah Roloff intends to offer opinions on any of the topics listed in his disclosure, the state does not believe those opinions have been properly disclosed under Rule 16, which means the state cannot and is not required to disclose rebuttal testimony. Anticipated rebuttal testimony. In response to the defense expert disclosure for Josiah Roloff, and in addition to previously disclosed testimony, the state may call upon, again, Tanzola and then the two Barnharts. Now, again, the same exact language is used. Overall, Roloff's disclosure does not contain any substantive opinions to rebut. This is the same exact sentence that they used for all of these people. Okay, awesome. Well, how digital devices are forensically extracted, subsequent extracted data examined, and specifically about the tools utilized in the various digital forensic capacities. So to sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding what specifically is he going to testify about regarding how digital devices are forensically extracted. Which devices is he testifying to? What specifically is he going to testify about regarding subsequent extracted data? What specifically is he going to testify about the tools utilized? What does he mean when he's saying various digital forensic capacities? Next, how information is stored on a digital device and conclusions that can be drawn from various log files that demonstrate how a device is configured. So to sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding what specifically is he going to testify about regarding how information is stored on a digital device. What conclusions are drawn from various log files regarding the device configuration? Specifically, which log files is Roloff referencing? Which devices were these log files obtained? And I believe that this has everything to do with Dylan Mortensen and her dad. So, could there be more than that? Absolutely. So, now, number 3 here is different kinds of digital forensic extractions performed on devices during the investigation and prosecution of Mr. Kohberger. To sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding what specifically is he going to testify about regarding the different kinds of digital extractions, which devices. The analysis of the produced electronic data sets has been conducted to analyze and create timelines review the context surrounding specific activity, and generate patterns of life conclusions. Now, remember what I said one of the days? I said, these girls are really we all are. We're nosy people, okay? They went and grabbed golf clubs just a couple weeks before this, 11/13, the murders. They went and grabbed golf clubs and went hunting around the house. Okay? When they thought that there was somebody potentially in their house, right? They didn't isolate themselves in a room, right? And not do anything. That would be out of the norm compared to what they did 2 weeks ago, or whether it was 3 or 4. Whenever they came back and they saw that the front door was wide open and the washer or the dryer, one of them were running, okay? Did they call Hunter Johnson to come over, okay, and search the house? How did they, were they calling and texting people? And then there's going to be like other things. Like the normal pattern of life, let's say, like setting an alarm on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day, like someone's alarm goes off because they get up because they go to like work or school. You know what I mean? That's a pattern. But on the weekends, the alarm's never on. Okay. They never set an alarm during, let's say, the weekend. They've never set an alarm before. And then on that night, they all set their alarms for 8:00. I'm just throwing this out as an example of something that would be out of the norm. All of these girls set an 8:00 alarm. They've never done that ever in their existence of living in that house. So, to sufficiently rebut, the state needs information regarding 1, what specific electronic data sets did Roloff analyze? 2, what is the timeline? Tom Slavinsky, I think, came up with a pretty badass Excel spreadsheet, I want to say, where what it did, don't hold me to this, but I believe how it was broken down is all the victims and the roommates, and then where each of them, like, it's going to have all like the times on the left, and it's going to say like where they all were, stuff like that. And I think they have one that was just for that day, going into that night, going into the next morning, and then I think there's a broader one that was over a course of period of time. Again, I could be totally wrong. But so now, what is the timeline? What context are they referencing, and what are the specific activities? Conclusions regarding patterns of life. See that POL. That's what Cy just wrote that big paper on. I think it's very, very interesting. And Cy is saying that you need at least 180 days if you want best practice to be able to do pattern of life. Okay. Heather, I don't think that we're going to be robbed of that. So Heather says, I was looking forward most to Cy's presentation on the other phones. In this case, I'm so mad we were robbed of a trial. I don't think that we're going to be robbed of what you want to see here, obviously, as far as having a trial, but this information I think is going to come out. Whatever Cy, whatever Tom Slavinsky, whatever these people were going to be testifying to, I think that stuff's coming out for what it's worth, Heather. Good to see you in chat. Now, I'm not going to spend much time here because this is wild, but in response to the defendant's expert disclosures, the state may call Dr. Gary Dawson as an expert witness in toxicology. And this is where Ann Taylor was like, what? We don't have an expert in this. Like, what are you talking about? So, and this is his CV. So I'm going to get past the CV part. And I want to just show you a couple different things. Okay. Here, if you look down at the last paragraph where it says, in this case, there is a limited information available to me about the extent of the alcohol consumption by Madison Mogen. I am puzzled by this because they have all of the footage from the corner club. It was kind of like Karen Reed and her consumption, right? I get that they don't have like a 24-hour camera following these people, but they get to the corner club just a little bit after 10. You know, I don't know. And then they supposedly all take a nap. Right? Like from 5 to like 8. And then everybody's supposed to be like getting up, getting ready, and then going over to the Sigma Chi for just like a little bit. And then she comes back over the house. And she was supposedly just carrying around like, you know, her case of White Claw. But if somebody would have asked, hey, who does this case of White Claw belong to that's on like the ledge? I want to know if that was Maddie's. Because I think it was. How many beers were in there? Were there any, I say beers, seltzers, whatever. But so he's like, I have no idea kind of what she consumed. Like, okay. Other than she appeared intoxicated upon returning home. That's from what's his name? Eric Gower. So the information suggests that the interval from the time of last alcohol consumption by Mogen and the time of the attack was about 3 hours. This interval would allow for complete absorption of alcohol, i.e. the post-absorbed stage. So from the stomach and minimizing the confounding of post-mortem redistribution from the stomach contents. When alcohol is absorbed into the blood, it distributes the total body water, not to any particular tissue or organ. The source of the blood toxicology sample from Mogen was noted to be, what was the number? 0.282. Well, this is the least preferred source for drug analysis. It can be, or it can still be instructive under certain circumstances, particularly with alcohol, as alcohol distributes throughout the body water. So given the known the likely 3-hour interval between last consumption and Mogen's death, and the absence of disruption of the intestinal tract, the measured alcohol concentration would be indicative of gross intoxication. Some minor change in alcohol concentration postmortem cannot be ruled out, and a cautious interpretation would be appropriate. It is my opinion that Madison Mogen would have been markedly intoxicated from the effects of alcohol around the time of her death. She would not have the ability to mount a meaningful response to a sudden threat to her person. Now it says, see Table 1 for a summary of the clinical signs and symptoms. I have limited my review to that of Madison Mogen. However, the same general principles would apply to Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. Now, here's the table. What did they say? What was her number? What do you guys think? Look at these. Dude, then Karen Reed was like dead. Coma. What was Karen Reed's? Yeah, so I think Maddie was what, in here? But then like, right? Disoriented, mental confusion, dizziness, exaggerated emotional states, disturbances of sensation and perception of color, form, motion, dimensions, decreased sense of pain, impaired balance, muscular incoordination, staggering, gait, slurred speech. And so I'm like, okay, well then where would Ethan fall? And so anyways, this opinion is subject to review and revision in the event additional pertinent facts are disclosed. We don't even know what Gary was given. I'm telling you, Adderall would offset if there was Adderall in his system. So, anyways, that's that. Next is the S7, which is, this is Darren Gilbertson. I just can't even with this. This is just mind-blowing to me. It's always going to be mind-blowing, but Darren Gilbertson giving an expert rebuttal. So Gilbertson will testify that he was assigned and worked as the lead investigator for the Idaho State Police, assisting the Moscow Police Department in this case. As lead investigator for the Idaho State Police, Gilbertson is familiar with most of the evidence recovered by law enforcement in this case. For purposes of this disclosure, Gilbertson relied on the autopsies of the victims, his personal observations of 1122 King Road, his personal observations, and the surrounding area, the photographs and video taken of 1122 King Road, and the reports detailing the processing of the crime scene. Okay, but we know that there was no details, there was no reports available, unless he was looking at notes. Gilbertson will testify. He arrived at the crime scene at about 2:40 from November 13th And then from November 13th to November 14th, ISP detectives documented and processed the crime scene. Is he going to testify to how trampled it was? On November 16th, ISP Forensic Services was briefed on the scene information. That was briefed. Highlight the fuck out of that word. Brief. You guys, they didn't know shit. On November 17th, ISP Forensic Services arrived and took over documentation and processing of the crime scene. Excuse me? So wait a second. November 13th and 14th, ISP detectives were only doing things. Oh, God. This is really important. ISP detectives documented and processed the crime scene on November 13th and 14th. The forensic services were not even used then until on November 16th. Hey, the ISP Forensic Services were briefed. And then on November 17th, ISP Forensic Services arrived and took over documentation and processing of the crime scene. What? You guys, what the fuck? They said that they were there and they were doing that on that day, especially at least the 14th. I would have so many questions. Anyways, Gilbertson will testify based on review of surrounding video surveillance. Investigators believe the homicides occurred between 4:07 and 47 seconds. Gilbertson will testify. Do you see how this is like? So, Gilbertson, you didn't take into account anything that Dylan had to say? Because you did. You didn't take into account those text messages? Because you did. No? What about if those text messages weren't there? How about that? That's some bullshit. Gilbertson will testify investigators conducted timed runs at 1122 King Road to gain an understanding of the approximate time needed to have carried out the homicides. Oh, hot damn. Please see Supplemental Report 194. You guys, this was done on November 21st. A week. Within a week. Get the fuck out of here. Okay. Okay. And again, it says, see Supplemental Report 194 previously discovered to the defense and attached as State's Exhibit 7. And we've all seen it. Specifically, this was done to see if one person could have committed the 4 homicides in the approximately 13 minutes time frame estimated by investigators. Gilbertson will discuss his experience with timed runs. Why didn't they video record this? I agree. I agree how you're going to ever say that. Why were you thinking that it was just one person? Why did it need to be one person? In fact, when you actually found out that, I don't know, how about the crime scene? It didn't look cleaned up to you. There was not a trail. Not a fucking trail. Okay? You guys were not thinking that this could have been multiple people. Then why were you looking at Jack Showalter doing this with somebody else? We're listening to these interviews, and these interviews should be blowing everybody away when fraternity brothers are saying, yeah, I think somebody in the Greek life is capable of this. I was like, oh my God, wait, what did he just say? That you asked me that question about one of my teammates. Do I think that somebody would have been capable of that? And if my answer is yeah, the only way that that's possible is for me to say that they, in self-defense, going into a home when people are sleeping and just, I don't know, killing. No, none of my teammates could be capable of doing that. Here, the Greek kids, yeah. It's mind-blowing. And he had, well, Detective Gilbert said, were you listening to these interviews that were being conducted? You're the lead. You weren't listening to what these frat boys were saying? Mind-blowing. Are you in the fraternity? Were you in a fraternity? Oh, by the way, Van Leuven, were you in one? Yeah, I was a Sigma Chi. What? Just mind-blowing. So, to see this written out, whew. But Gilbertson will discuss his experience with timed runs and how those timed runs were conducted. Gilbertson will testify. Investigators included 2 possible routes back to the vehicle parking area above and to the south. The shortest and most direct path going from the parking area and moving east to west along the back of the house took approximately 30 seconds. A second path starting at the southern edge of the property and walking a fence line through some trees and moving in the south to north direction towards the back of the house took approximately 1 minute. The times to make the same 2 paths at a running pace were approximately 6 to 7 seconds for the short path and 10 to 12 seconds for the longer path. You guys, there is no blood like flying off your body when you're running. You know, I mean, wouldn't blood be flying off your body? They found no blood outside that house. Straight up clown world. How about you douse yourself with paint, red paint, okay? And go take that same fucking path, motherfucker. How about that? And then do it running. And I want to see what it looks like on that patio back there. What do you guys think? Douse yourself with red paint and run around back there. Let me know. Well, after they do all that, then they said that Gilbertson will testify. Defendant could have gone from his car to the home, carried out the 4 homicides, and returned to his car in as few as 2 minutes and 6 seconds. Oh, shit. Going at a fast pace and on the shortest route to the vehicle, or 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Going at a slower pace on a longer route to the vehicle. Well, that's funny. We haven't found a single person that would ever get on the stand and testify to that. Yeah, and try changing your clothes without getting wet paint on yourself. Try doing all that and not getting anything inside your car. How about that? Because that car was fresh. Nothing. Yeah, but he had all that time to clean it. Not when you live in an apartment complex. Okay? If you had your own personal house, you could pull into a garage, you can go to town. Sure. He lived in an apartment complex. I just don't think that he got into his vehicle. Why couldn't he be in a different vehicle? I don't know. Yeah. You guys, there is not a single footprint in that house. Not a single one. And for them to say ignore that, for them to ignore the fact that this person would have had to, clean up something. Or what about changing their clothes? How about the fact that there was no blood from anybody upstairs mixed with anybody downstairs? How about that? How about the fact that Dylan said that this, when she first heard Kaylee say there's someone here, to then seeing the person in the mask, that was how much time had passed? She said about 10 or 20 minutes. So Gilbertson will testify this would allow the defendant time to clean up or change clothes before leaving the scene. Where did that happen? I'm just curious. Where was this cleanup? Look at clean up. Where did he put the stuff that he cleaned with? In his book bag? Okay, well, how about this? How is there no blood between the two upstairs victims mixed with the two downstairs victims? How about that one? Now that's some fucking stellar shit. That's like, wait, what, Lana? Yeah. There is no mixture between like Kaylee and Ethan and Xana, or Kaylee and Maddie mixed with like just Xana, or Kaylee just mixed with Xana or Ethan. How is that possible? Explain that to me. I know how it's possible, but not with this shit, not in this time frame. I know how it's possible. That would mean, I'm telling you, you would have to change after you committed the crime upstairs. And you couldn't, I don't think, use the same knife. You'd have to get completely naked. Take all of your clothes, right? Put them in a bag, right? Take your weapon, put that in the bag as well. Then put on like new gear, or just go downstairs and kill them naked. Commit the murder on the second floor naked, and then put on clothes before you leave to cover up for like the blood that you have all over you. Or, I mean, how many times are you changing here? You'd have to change twice. You'd have to change after you kill the people upstairs, right? And then you would have to change after you kill the people downstairs. And you're just stuffing your bags. Like you brought 2 book bags with you. I mean, how? And then you have to put on a new outfit, right? I don't know. I just think that if that's what happened, I believe that's possible, right? And you're also like, you're doing this not having to worry about time, because there's nobody. That's what Scott Roeder, I think, nailed, is he said this is somebody that was very cool, calm. There was no rushing around, running around, because that's when your gravity droplets, the way that they'd be dropping, and then you're smearing. That's just not there. And so this wasn't somebody that was doing that. And I agree. But they need it to be in this time frame because nothing else works, right? So instead of saying, hey, Brian Colbert just didn't want to offer up who else, did this with him, we couldn't get it out of him. But he is one of the people, and we believe that he could have done this with other people. I can get down with that. Does that make more sense? Because I don't know how I'm going to be able to get down with one person doing this in that time frame and none of the blood mixtures. Like, not blood anywhere. We're talking about not on the victim's mixture. We're talking about in the spatter found on the wall. Like, there is 0 mixtures that have to do with the people upstairs and the people downstairs. And it's almost like, guys, it's like there was 2 separate crimes that were committed at different times. It's almost like that. Like Kaylee and Maddie no longer with us after 252. And then Ethan and Xana no longer with us after 4. But then if that's the case, right? Well, how did Brian get there? Because I thought that he's still in, on WSU's campus. Lana is absurd. Forgive my typos. You guys, it's just, it's kind of like the Delphi case for me. All of those dudes were going back and forth the whole time with the Delphi case. So like, there's no way one person could have done this. The FBI was saying there's no way that one person could have done this. Okay. And then when you would have seen that do you know how many mixtures of DNA was at the crime scene of the Delphi case? Up to like 5 different mixtures. His Richard Allen's DNA nowhere. Like, how is it not a not guilty from the jury to see that for as brutal as a crime that was, personal stabbings, changing people, putting clothing back on them, dragging people, posing people, putting all the things that you would have taught. His DNA nowhere. Nada. Richard Allen's. Other unknown male and a cop. Huh. What? Wild. I just can't believe that. And then you see Darren Gilbertson giving these interviews. And I think that somebody needs to interview him truly about this. And because now we have the crime scene photos, and it's like, you can really say with a straight face. I mean, I get it. Like in November of 2022, you didn't know yet that there was no mixtures. But now you did know, and you were still going to stand by and say that this was done by one person, and talk about your, 1 minute to 3 minute trial runs. You knew the house layout, and then supposedly you see Dylan and you're not totally freaked out and you don't go after her and just end her life. Because if you go off of their version of events, which was the target was somebody on the, the upper floor, well, then why did Ethan and Xana get killed? Because they disrupted that? Well, then that doesn't make sense because Dylan disrupted and she's perfectly fine. Or does it make more sense that everybody that was actually there that night was killed? And at that time, when they were in that home and committed those crimes, there was nobody else in the house. You understand? And then so whenever, Dylan and Bethany arrived home, after maybe they came home and they left for a little bit and they came back, so people in college leave all the time to go get a piece of ass and come back. Now we're going to be moving on to Stephen Becker. So on January 16th, 2025, defense filed an expert disclosure for Stephen Becker regarding digital forensics and vehicle identification. Now, in response to Becker's technical report dated January 23rd, 2024, the state intends to introduce the following anticipated factual testimony from FBI agent. And you know who that is, right? You got either Hill or Immel. Who do we got? They're going to testify regarding the defense's claim that the investigators were not able to determine if there was or was not a front license plate on the suspect vehicle. identified as a 2011-2016 white Honda Elantra, hereafter referred to as Vehicle 1. Remember how they were not allowed to say suspect vehicle? So here, Vehicle 1. On collected video surveillance in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022. In addition, blank will testify to the investigative significance of Vehicle 1 not having a front license plate. And Ann Taylor already took care of this. Ann Taylor handled this shit in calling Payne to the stand. Ann Taylor asked him, were you guys interested in a vehicle that didn't have a front license plate? Nope. No, we weren't. That was not something that we were looking into at all. Was that something? And now after we've seen the fact that we got the DMV video in the talking points back and forth between Brian and our girl Peggy, what do you guys think about that? But they claimed that they didn't have that until after they would have had that in after his arrest. Well, let's see. So their dude will testify that he has reviewed surveillance footage in order to determine which, if any, video clips showed whether or not Vehicle 1 was displaying a front license plate in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022. Now, in reviewing the surveillance footage, blank located video clips which showed a clear view of the front bumper of Vehicle 1, and in doing so showed that there did not appear to be a front license plate attached to the vehicle. What the fuck are you talking about? What clear view are you referring to? Because we have yet to see anything. Look at this. And look which one they want to use. And we blew this up. We said, they cannot use that one now. You want to know why? Because remember, I did a whole big explosive live and I said, you guys, this is not the vehicle. It's impossible for it to be the vehicle because of the timestamp of what is then will come after it. This is crazy. There is no clear view of this. You can't even... This is the vehicle that's going through the intersection. This is that Sunset Mart. And the Sunset Mart clip doesn't even have the timestamp on it. I just can't. They pieced together multiple cars. They did, and it's outed. It's outed when you do the time of the Ridge Road camera. You cannot be on the Ridge Road camera before you got on this camera. It's nuts. And look at them. They doubled down in this shit. They doubled down on this, and it's wrong. The time is wrong. That vehicle is not the vehicle. This is not the vehicle. This cannot possibly be the vehicle because it's not possible that that's the vehicle that's on the camera from Ridge Road. But they're like, listen to this. So your rebuttal is going to be somebody that has confirmation bias because they were actually part of the investigation. They were actually investigating. You understand? Like they were an investigator. They were an investigator in this worldwide manhunt. And now they're going to come and be the rebuttal for their work. Very bizarre. So the below is only a summary of the collected video surveillance showing no license plate and is not intended to be an all-encompassing. You guys keep saying that. We have your all-encompassing straight up your fucking asses. They're nuts. You guys, we have the whole exhibit. So this is all smoke. A full summary of video of vehicle 1 has been previously disclosed. The below noted camera locations were checked for their timestamp accuracy. And how did you go about checking that timestamp accuracy? So the time, approximately 1 minute and 43 seconds behind local time. How did you check that? And guess what? It's still wrong. It's still wrong. It doesn't matter. It's because whoever did this fucked up the math. I love this type of shit. I love when cheaters get caught cheating, but then they get caught on the double down as well. There's nothing greater. I love it. I love people that can use your brains. Like, I don't have to cheat. I don't got to be corrupt. I will use my brains and figure it out. I don't need to get in the same fucking mud hole that you need to get into. I will figure out what mud hole you got in and fucking blast your ass and show it and exploit it and expose it. This is just crazy. These are two different vehicles. Like 1000% all in. I proved it. But this vehicle does not appear to have a front license plate. Does not appear. It's like we're watching Ace Ventura. You know, assholes appear closer than they seem. The wild shit. So, crossing Main Street and continuing westbound on the Lauder. Yep, right when it's going through Main Street. Down on, so 1455 South, blah, 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 blah. Camera time approximately 7 seconds behind local time. This time is approximate, determined by time comparison with other cameras at the same business due to frame glitches in the surveillance footage. A vehicle matching the description of vehicle 1 is seen turning from northbound Johnson Avenue onto northbound Bishop Boulevard and continues northbound. The vehicle does not appear to have a front license plate attached. But guess where that's coming from? Guess where this is? You don't have that vehicle leaving to get into Moscow, you pieces of shit. Capiche? Where is the 253? Where is the 253? 2:53 a.m. Where's that car getting out of Dodge to go on over to Moscow? The one with the fog lights. Where's that one at? What you got? Do you understand? For this to be the trifecta, you need to have the car that's leaving WSU at 2:53. Then you have the car that's on Moscow's campus, right? Idaho. And then you want the comeback. That's your trifecta. You don't have it. You don't have anything close. And that's what I've been screaming since the beginning of this case. How did you get to Brian Kohlberger, number one? And number two, how are you connecting the WSU car that you said that you had to the one that's just in the middle of the fucking road? The middle of the road on Indian Hills Drive. How are you connecting those two? Oh, we're not. Because we can't. But that's that car. Okay. So how did it get into town? Well, see, it actually went the same way that it left. But if we say that, then whose vehicle's circling around and around and around at the 3:26, the three previous times? Because then you have to make all the loops the same car. Otherwise, it's reasonable doubt right there. That's why it was imperative that they make the 3 loops prior to when the 407 car arrives. That's what I believe now. Because you have reasonable doubt, if not, all day. It would appear that this was not a one-man job. one would have to ask themselves, why is Eric Gower lying about coming back to the area to take another ride at 3:12? Why lie about that? And then where'd you go? Where'd you drop him off? And he says that he went over to Indian Hills Drive. And I'm like, you can't make this shit up. But Eric Gower had to play Santa, and so he was cleared. You know? They needed someone to play Santa. And so Eric's like, hello, I'm Santa, and you need to clear me. Okay. So this just means absolutely nothing. Like this shit, it's useless. This is a wet towel. I don't give a fuck about. Brian Colbert already said that he was out driving around. So of course, do I think that that's his car coming home? Absolutely. 1000%. But that doesn't, but where you're saying it came from, that doesn't make any sense. You're not able to say where it's coming from. So that's just what it is. Like, just like when you lied about what car was leaving, Ashley, you guys lied, and you were involved in the search. You were involved in getting the search warrants. You were involved in writing up the affidavit. You did it all, Ash. God. Now, rebuttal expert disclosure exhibit S9. On January 16, 2025, defense filed an expert disclosure for Stephen Becker regarding digital forensics and vehicle identification in response to Becker's technical report dated January 23rd, 2024. The state intends to introduce the following anticipated testimony from this person. It's a rebuttal to whatever he filed in January of 2024. So the defense claim is in the make model chart number 2 by the FBI, image 8 above is highlighted that the FBI concludes that the third brake light is low on the rear window. This is an assumption and not a fact, as the rear window is not visible in image 8, page 12. Blank's anticipated testimony. The vehicle charts are for derivative visual assistance only. The conclusion of the make, model, and year exam was conducted with the totality of the submitted videos and images, not specifically represented within the charts. In Blank's opinion, the balcony videos depicting the questioned vehicle on November 13th, 2022, remember, they claimed that we couldn't do anything with that video. The balcony video said there was a blooming light, right? But what they're claiming here, though, is we're talking about when the vehicle was leaving. So, depicted the third brake light in the lower window approximately 6 times at the listed times of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Defense claim 3 different vehicles should have been considered during the elimination process. Oh, so hear this out. Ready? It's like if you're truly doing your job, and you were truly doing this and not working backwards, okay, and actually working, frontwards, like, hey, here, these are the videos that we sent these people. These are the different vehicles that they say that they're possible, like that they could possibly be. Okay. If you truly did it that way, that's why I said the number one thing to go and get is to see what stuff was being flagged, or looking and pulling different people's permits that had certain types of vehicles that met like the, hey, we're trying to figure out what car this is type of thing. Like, where was any of that shit done? Well, guess what, guys? It wasn't. And we should all be saying to ourselves, how the fuck could that not have been done? Because that's not what they were doing. Okay? They worked backwards. And they said, listen, you have to figure out a way to get to this man and build probable cause we're not using IGG here. Okay. That should tell you how not confident they were that it wouldn't hold up because they did something fucked up. So here, these three vehicles that should have been considered that were never considered during the elimination process. It would have been a 2015 Hyundai Sonata, a 2019 Subaru Legacy, and a Kia, Forte? No year listed. Page 16 and 18. Blank's anticipated testimony is 6,863 four-door sedans were reviewed during this elimination multiple times. The three suggested vehicles claimed by Mr. Becker were reviewed and eliminated due to a significant class characteristic difference. The Honda Elantra depicted below side window has an arrowhead style shaped window. None of the three vehicles suggested has this specific window shape. As such, they were eliminated as a possible match. And this is where they say, see this? It's like, and then see this? And then see this. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I believe that is Brian Clover's car that's coming back at the 5:30 time. Okay. 1000%. Do I believe that that's his phone? That's his car coming back at 5:30? Yes. I'm saying what they do not have is Brian Culver's vehicle leaving up out of Pullman, Washington. And if they did, they would have been putting it in there like they did in the probable cause, but they couldn't do that because it was never really the car, and they knew that it wasn't. And that's what you call a known falsehood in a probable cause that should make your probable cause null and void. And that's where Ashley Jennings was losing her shit, like saying a car can't just fucking turn around. Bitch, if a car just went the other way and turned around, you would still have it on fucking camera, you dumb fucking bitch. Okay? That's clearly not what happened. Like, you would still have it on camera. Okay, this is the defense's claim. If the defense's claim is that this photogrammatical, geometric, whatever the fuck they do here, the police did not do it. And you're supposed to do this to determine the unknown suspect vehicle's size. Without a size and shape overlay comparison or in video measurements, the police did not distinguish between the models of vehicles that have consistent size in the videos from near the incident scene. There is no evidence that the police presented that shows other models of vehicles did not have similar features to the unknown suspect vehicle or unknown vehicles of interest. For example, one popular model, the sedan, the Honda Accord, does not have the body line similar to the unknown suspect vehicle and can be ruled out as not similar. The police only provided confirmation bias by using a known target vehicle model and matching characteristics instead of eliminating all other potential similar vehicles that contain these characteristics. Otherwise, they would have included the Sonata and the Legacy. This fails to meet reasonable scientific certainty from their analysis. The police analysis and determination of the make and model of the unknown suspect vehicles was improper and lacked other possible vehicle models with similar characteristics. Again, basically what he's saying is that you knew that Brian Culver drove a white Honda Elantra. And so rather than if you claim to do it the other way and you didn't know that at first, right? And you were actually working the case like how you claimed to be working the case, then it would have been done completely different. But here you had a known fact. And your fucking work, it's like asking a third or fourth grader to do, hey, you're going to do these math problems and you have to show your work. If you do not show your work, you do not get credit. So imagine not showing your work, okay? And it's like, how did you get to the right answer without showing your work? Because I cheated, I already knew the answer. Okay? That's how. No different. But now, according to the state, Blank's anticipated testimony, the video depicting the vehicle in the Ridge Road video at 401 is not conducive to an accurate geometric examination to determine the vehicle length. The vehicle is not parallel to the camera, resulting in the inability to visually see the rear and front of the vehicle, allowing for an accurate measurement. There is also motion blur and blooming of the headlights that obscure the front of the vehicle. They couldn't do it. And guess what? The FBI did it. And the FBI does not do that. That's not part of their standard. Okay. So then we get to rebuttal expert disclosure, David Middleman, and it's like, this was disclosed way early on. I want to say way early on. This was before they all agreed that IGG was not going to come in. Okay. So let's just see if IGG, I still kind of want to take a look at this. So on January 23rd, the defense filed expert disclosures for Daniel Helwig and Leah Larkin regarding single, S&P. The following anticipated testimony is in response to Helwig's disclosure and testimony at the motion to suppress hearing on January 23rd, 2025. The state intends to introduce the following anticipated testimony from David Middleman, Chief Executive Officer at Othram. Middleman will provide an overview of how S&P testing and forensic genetic genealogy works, prioritizing privacy and presentation of supportable hypothesis testing and forensic genetic genealogy. His CV is attached. Middleman will testify that in order to render a credible opinion, a witness would need to have extensive direct experience, including creating S&P profiles and doing IGG, in order to speak to many of the points, including validation, quality standards, and proficiency testing for S&P testing. Regarding a connection between S&P testing and personal medical information, Middleman will testify Othram does not look for personal medical information through the use of S&P testing. We knew that wasn't going to be used. Okay. So here, however, Othram is not performing whole sequencing, which aims to capture the entire at high resolution. Instead, they were doing it this way. So in addition, Middleman will testify that the collection of DNA evidence from the crime scene, the development of an STR profile, and its entry into CODIS all took place before Othram's involvement in this case. With an STR profile already in CODIS, identifying the suspect was ultimately a matter of time. And that's like, well, yeah, if somebody goes and commits a felony and gets caught, right? They have to get caught because you're just going to keep on getting this person's DNA, right? But they have to get caught. So, Othram was engaged to build an S&P profile and perform forensic genetic genealogy to accelerate the investigative process. While this approach expedited the identification, it did not change the inevitable outcome. The suspect would have been identified regardless. Again, I don't know how you make that claim. The only way that's happening is if this person commits more crimes, their DNA is found at crime scenes, right? And then they have to get caught. That's what like the defense was going to be arguing. Like you're saying it would just a matter of time. Do you know how many unsolved cases there are where there's DNA? It's like these people need to commit crimes and get caught, and then you could link them to other crimes. Or, according to the middlemen's, no, or more people are just going to be ending up putting their DNA in the system because they want to know where they're from and shit. So we're just going to keep on making the database bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, yeah, we will eventually be able to solve it. So at some point, see, they always say this, at some point, they won't ever say when this was. The local agency, MPD, according to what's his name, Payne, they had no say in this. No, according to Bill fucking Thompson and Ashley Jennings, which we are now calling Bill Jennings. So at some point, the local agency instructed Othram to halt its work. The fuck they did. PD wasn't calling no shots. And the FBI became involved in the process, of course. The FBI's role may have further accelerated the work. How? So here, we are not going to throw Othram under the bus because they shouldn't be thrown on the bus. We just made the S&P, okay? It was the FBI that literally, right? Now it depends on who the FBI used, though. So the FBI's role may have further accelerated the work Othram had already begun, but Othram was on track to reach the same conclusion. This is evident from the preliminary, incomplete report Othram provided after being asked to stop its efforts. I thought they were in the wrong goddamn tree. They were on the wrong branch. I don't know. FGG does not replace traditional forensic testing. It serves as an investigative tool to guide law enforcement toward reference testing. In this case, additional reference testing was always going to lead to the identification of Mr. Kohlberger, regardless of which agency completed the process or when it occurred. These people are high on drugs. I don't care what anybody says. If you're going into databases that you should not be going into, what the fuck are you talking about? You were unable to complete the tree. It just blows my mind. So here, prioritizing privacy and presentation of supportable hypothesis testing and forensic genetic genealogy. So there's just one day we'll go over that, but keeping the train moving. Okay. Rebuttal expert disclosure, Riley Nolan. So exhibit S11. The anticipated rebuttal testimony in response to the defendant's expert disclosures, and in addition to previously disclosed testimony, the state may call Riley Nolan as expert witness to respond, rebut, and testify as follows. It's about DNA. We knew this, right? We've already kind of pretty much covered this. We covered Riley extensively. She testified at a hearing, so we got her on the record. Next up. Oh, rebuttal expert disclosure. This is the ME. So in response to defendant's expert disclosures filed on January 23rd, 2025, and in addition to previously disclosed testimony, the state may call Dr. Veena Singh to testify regarding the following. All victims would have died within minutes. She is unable to determine what each individual victim was experiencing at the time of this altercation, but in general, wounds such as this would be painful due to the extensive involvement of tissues containing sensory nerve endings. That is absolutely awful. I was not expecting to read that right there. That is god awful and jeez. Horrible. Ugh. Welcome. Bullshit. She will testify a K-bar style knife is consistent with the injuries sustained by the victims. And guess what? She's going to be testifying that there's other things that were consistent. That word is consistent. There's lots of things that can be consistent. In response, the defense claims that not all of the sharp force injuries observed could have been inflicted by a K-bar style knife. She will testify the dimensions of the skin wounds can't be used to exclude a knife based on knife size. This is because the skin contains elastic tissue, which will stretch around a weapon and recoil or retract when the weapon is withdrawn. The elasticity of the skin often causes the skin wound to be smaller than the size of the weapon used. This is awful. So she would be testifying regarding the striations. So Singh will testify that defense experts appear to be conflating the two, serrations and striations. The fine striations described in association with certain wounds are not the same as indicators of a serrated blade. The striations seen in the first photo below can be caused by any blade, whether serrated or non-serrated, due to irregularities or imperfections on the blade edge. But I thought this was like a brand new knife. A serrated blade leaves more prominent, evenly spaced. And so those got completely redacted, obviously. Regarding the number of weapons used, she will testify that the blunt force injuries do not necessarily mean another weapon was used. Blunt force injuries can be inflicted by a body part. Guess what, though? That's wild. They specifically asked Gilbertson, well, was just basically Brian Culver's hands used, And he said no. So that just blows me away. So he's going against the report of also by causing someone to impact an object in the environment, wall, table, bed frame, etc. Well, what about Kaylee? That's what. Yeah. Some of this stuff is just, God. All right. We get to talk about Miss Sutton here. So on January 29th, 2025, defense filed expert disclosures for Matt and Brent Turvey. So Matt Nodal regarding crime scene analysis. The following anticipated testimony is in response to his scene reconstruction dated January 22nd, 2025, and Turvey's crime scene analysis dating back from same time. In addition to previously disclosed testimony, the state may call Paulette Sutton to testify regarding the following. Nodal claimed, this is what he said. I think we saw some of this potential. So the drip trails, when present, can represent movement of a bleeding person or movement of an object with wet blood of sufficient volume to continue to drip after blood acquisitions, i.e., a bloody weapon. Sutton's response. Sutton will testify drip trails can certainly indicate movement of an object with enough wet blood to create drips, but this type of drip trail is typically characterized by a small number of drips due to the lack of replenishing blood supply. In comparison, a bleeding individual can create a longer, more continuous drip trail. The comment made in Sutton's report was intended only to address whether or not a continuous drip trail indicative of a bleeding individual was observed. Again, this is regarding marker 42 in image. This stain, as depicted in the Sutton report, image 4587, is an altered blood stain. The appearance, we went through this. I'm just not going to go through something that we've already went through. So hang on one second. All of this stuff here, I think at the end, we went through. Yeah. But we still have yet to get their actual reports. And we still have yet to get her actual report because we're going backwards. And so I think that's the last. Yeah. Oh, wait. Perfect. We will close with Katie White. This is all I care about. The Katie White stuff is right here at the end. Okay. So in Idaho, individuals convicted of felonies and those placed on the sex offender registry must be entered into CODIS. Idaho also allows for the entry of DNA profiles associated with unidentified human remains or living people unable to identify themselves. Idaho also allows for the entry of unidentified profiles generated from evidence associated with a crime when that profile is believed to be from the putative perpetrator. So the profiles are then entered by the reporting analyst and reviewed during technical review. Idaho State Police Forensic Services is required to follow the NDIS Operational Procedures Manual and abide by an MOU between the FBI and the Idaho State Police. Each state also has one CODIS administrator who is responsible for ensuring only approved profiles are entered. White is the state CODIS administrator for Idaho. White agrees with the reporting analysis decision not to enter the unknown profiles from male B and male D into CODIS because those DNA samples were not eligible for entry into hold on. CODIS. DNA profiles. Okay, you guys, dude, I call straight absolute bullshit. In the Nancy Guthrie case, they're over here taking a glove from 2 miles away and putting it in CODIS. You're shitting me, right? DNA profiles believed to be attributable to the perpetrator are eligible for entry into CODIS. DNA profiles attributable to victims, non-probative individuals, and items without an established link to the crime/crime scene are not allowed to be entered. Are these people sick? There is blood everywhere. Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? This is Tina with What the Fuck Translation Services. What the fuck are you talking about? I just can't. I don't know how they sleep at night. You guys, they decided, you know what, we are not putting these in CODIS. Well, it kind of makes you think that you knew that they would be in CODIS. One reason I say that is because I don't believe that any of those frat boys would have been in CODIS. Even if you enter their, just because you put DNA in there, like same thing with Brian Colbert, you put his in there, there's not a match because he's not a felon up until this case, right? So same thing with these frat kids. You put their fucking DNA in CODIS, it doesn't matter. There's not going to be a match, right? But it's almost like they thought that there could be a match here. Isn't that crazy? I'm just saying. I personally believe, how can you sit and say that that blood, I just, wow. When you see this spatter all across, this has nothing to do with anything. Can you imagine if they didn't, if Nancy Guthrie had, she was taken from her bed. Well, there was blood in the laundry room. Well, that's fucking doesn't matter. That has nothing. That is not a nexus to that scene that's in that bedroom, because that's where she was taken. And then it was her blood at the front door. So, but in the laundry room, no, we saw blood. We're not putting that in there. What? What do you think? You think that's how that would go down? They put fucking gloves from 2 miles away in that bitch. Please. Fuck out of here. I mean, you guys can tell yourselves whatever the fuck you want, Katie White. I don't give a shit. But that's wild. Let me ask you a question. How do you think, let's hypothetically, throw out a hypothetical here. What if this case, if IGG didn't pan out, okay? So you have your CODIS hit, or you have, not your hit, but you have from the sheath, A, male, unknown male A. 1 month goes by. 2 months goes by. 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 years go by. However much time it's been right now. What if the Gonsalves family, or any one of these families, were to hear that if there is unknown male blood, B and D, in that house, and they never put it into CODIS? What do you think? This was an unsolved case right now. Or if it was unsolved, like 3 months goes by, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do you think they're going to make that same decision? We determined that we weren't putting it into CODIS. So why would you ever then put it into CODIS? But can you imagine if these families would have found out, or any... Wait, what do you mean you didn't enter? There's male DNA there, other blood, and you didn't test it? Well, we have it. We didn't test it against anybody. No. You didn't put it into CODIS? No. We don't think that it has anything to do with the scene. Wait, what? How do you think you would feel if you're a parent? Ali Tally's like, this is how I feel. 20 memberships. I can tell you this. They would be lying if they could seriously say that they'd sit around a room and all look at each other and be like, okay, so we're going to still keep male B and D out of CODIS? Isn't that crazy? And you're over here wondering, you got one of the girls saying that she heard a flash boom, and you have the other one like, okay, well, maybe we're dealing with two different people here. Also, this happened so quickly that maybe we are different, and none of these are mixtures. Maybe we are dealing, maybe we should run those B and Ds. Maybe we should run B and D, because as this evidence is flowing, it's a fluid case. And we're starting to see some stuff like, the two females aren't mixed with anybody downstairs. Like their blood, nothing. I mean, there's no mixtures here between the people upstairs and downstairs. It's like a separate, it's like, I can tell you this. If I found out that that happened in my kid's case, that we're sitting on an unsolved case, and y'all are sitting on blood inside the house, male unknown B and D. And so it's like, but this should all tell us something. And what it tells me is that somebody needs to use this case down the road, because this would mean that these scientists believe that blood being in that house and not in a location that they deem necessary could lead to what? People being what? Falsely accused. That's what that tells me. Because what other reason would you not fucking enter it? Because you know once you enter it in there, and that that means you're claiming that you think that this is significant, right? But why wouldn't it be significant? There's blood inside a crime scene that is a fucking bloodbath. And who is this? So this woman made the decision that these are not important. I'd be telling the fucking jury that even after you saw that this potentially could have been maybe more than one person, and you're looking that we got these other male unknown, what? Then all you got on that sheath is just touch DNA, but this is actually blood, motherfucking, whoa. I don't know. That tells me that these people know that this is how easy it is for somebody to be wrongfully accused and convicted. That's all I got to say. They know. They know. It's wild. I always like to twist it around like, okay, well, why don't we look at it this way? So I would just love to hear, here you go. Katie's like, items without an established link. Established link? There's a fucking house full of goddamn blood. People were chopped up in every fucking goddamn room almost, okay? And you don't think there's a link here? Are you high? I don't know how much, I don't know how much of a link you need. It's blood inside of a fucking house where everybody's been stabbed to death over 100 and some times. But hey, I don't know what type of a link you need. If this isn't a link, I don't know what is. The laboratory must justify entry of every profile put into CODIS, and many factors can influence eligibility. For a large crime scene, not all locations within the scene are always weighed equally in probative value. It is very common to locate non-probative biological stains within residences due to everyday activities such as consensual sexual activity, small injuries, and lack of cleanliness. Well, that's basically what they're saying. That everybody was just promiscuous there, and they're not clean, and from time to time, there could be just small injuries. Evidence located closer to a point of entry. That's the point of entry. Is coming up and down those stairs. That's where Dylan was flying around, all around. This is crazy. It's crazy. Remember they asked if there was ever any fights in that house, and everybody's saying no. People didn't fight in that house. Did you ever see people bleeding there? No. Like, what? They're all saying that nothing like that went down there, okay? So I don't know. I just think that you would take this, and I would use this if I was a lawyer in every case. every case and I'd be like, listen, I would like to use the Brian Kohlberg case to show that these people believe that if there's blood places in a house where people were stabbed to death, 4 victims, yeah, they didn't even test the blood. Then you wonder why Dr. Moore is why where the fuck his life ended up. Because people like this making the calls. Fucking ridiculous. Okay, well, they go on to talk about that evidence located closer to a point of entry, a disturbed area, or a victim will typically be considered of higher probative value than other areas. For this case, a knife sheath next to one of the victims produced an unknown male profile. The victims were believed to have been stabbed to death, and the sheath's proximity to the victim's body provided the strongest link to a potential perpetrator. The residence where the crime scene occurred is heavily trafficked. It's heavily trafficking now. It's heavily trafficked by college students, and the location of the blood spot on the underside of a handrail, male B, does not in itself indicate a link to the crime. But we're not talking about DNA. We're talking about blood. We're not just talking like your skin cells. We're talking blood. I don't know. A gardening style glove located outside the residence in a publicly accessible area produced an additional unknown male profile. A gardening style glove? What? Okay. Male D. No DNA attributable to the victims was located on this item. And maybe that was the glove that was used to, like, I don't know, undress oneself. I'm just saying, they're the ones that are talking about how this will happen in, 13 minutes. I don't know. Maybe one of the killers did cut themselves. I don't know. But how did they not find the glove during the processing of the scene? How about that? I don't give a fuck. They were walking all around. You didn't. Come on. I thought for sure that McDonough, that man just has hawk eyes, like pains over here. Like, what the fuck? Anyways, had DNA from one or more of the victims been located on this item, it likely would have been CODIS eligible. Oh, likely? Okay. At the time CODIS eligibility was determined, male DNA profiles A, B, and D were unidentified, and it was not possible for lab staff to know who would ultimately be linked to any one item. The CODIS eligibility determination was strictly made based on an evaluation of the probative value of each item. So what basically Ann Taylor was saying is you knew that they were not Brian Kohlbergers. So wouldn't that have been a reason to do it? Because you could have just looked at them to see, like, this isn't the same person. And that should just, like, blow everybody's mind. Especially knowing that it was touch DNA on the sheath. That should just blow your fucking dicks and tits off. Okay? What is up with BF and the iPad? We talked about that earlier. Basically, the defense is saying whatever Bethany told investigators she did with that iPad, the data that came back on it is not indicative that that's what happened. So, I just mind blowing. If I'm parents, dude, test that shit. Put that shit in there. I don't want anyone getting away with this. Like, nobody's getting away with doing this to my kid. Nobody. And so, like, but can you, like, this is written in like emotion, like this is what they think of DNA, blood in a crime scene. It's not probative because it just wasn't close enough to the victims. And the house, they said, was highly trafficked and it was not clean. Meanwhile, Dylan just said that they had parents' weekend and that they all cleaned, and you're probably not going to find any DNA. Can't make this shit. That would make it probative. They just had parents' weekend, and so they all just cleaned. Fucking mother shit. Okay. Okay. Well, that is going to bring us to the 11 o'clock hour. I loved being here with all of you guys. What do we think? Just something to sleep on, huh? We can all sleep on it. Come with some really good questions tomorrow. And we're just going to do straight Q&A. We need to have a recap of the Q&A from our 116-page blowout. I think the only thing that's probative here is if the lifestyle of these children, kids, young adults, college students, if their lifestyle would have brought on anything like this, then it's probative. Okay? That's all that matters. I'm sorry, but nobody cares about Adderall use on college campuses. You're not going around and setting up task force to take down Adderall drug dealers. Okay, Van Leuven? So either there was a drug problem over here on this campus that could have potentially led to, you know, hey, that's all I care. That's all I would care about. And from what I was told, I have a couple sources, and I said I would reveal this when the time was right. The time's right. You guys remember Caden Young? Okay. Well, Caden Young, after his death, they had to clean out his room, and there was hella cocaine in his room. Okay. So something that I have always wondered was, okay, did he drive or did he fly to Seattle when he went there? And why was he buying cocaine if he had a shit ton on him? Okay. Why didn't he bring enough? Why would you want to buy cocaine in an area enough of people that you don't know when you already know that you have stuff and that it's not laced? Okay. So, and when I'm talking about, I'm not talking about just a little bit of cocaine. I'm talking about, so take that for what it's worth, which is very, very, very credible two sources. So independent sources. But it was in his frat house room, apartment, whatever the fuck you call it. Page 110, please. 110. Not tonight. Page 110. Show me what page you want, and that can be the first thing that we do tomorrow. How about that? So we're talking a bundle. I'm just using that word because I don't want to say the word, the terminology, because I just don't want people to freak out. We're talking about a lot. Okay? We're talking about a lot. So, also, I think everybody should know this, that the FBI stayed in that town and began raiding those kids. Okay? And I think that's bullshit. Because they were all told, and like they were tearing apart rooms and shit like that. And we're talking, let me go back and look at the dates. But this was obviously during this pending trial. And so it was like, God, I want to say it was like the summer of 2020. At the end of the summer of 2024? I mean, 2023? I have to go back and check. I say a bundle. I would never say cocaine in a bundle. I'll get you the actual amount. That's what you want. I have to go back and look at all my stuff. But Caden Young had a shit ton of cocaine in his room. A shit ton. So, but the FBI started raiding these kids' shit. And I thought it was really interesting who they were going after. And I thought it was bullshit. I thought it was not fair. I think it was targeted. And I think that if you spoke out on certain things, then they came for you and they targeted you. And that's just, I just don't think that's cool. Especially after you have people saying, we don't care about that. Blah, blah, blah. Well, go fuck yourself, because clearly you did, because you guys came knocking down doors. So that's some bullshit. But we'll talk about more of that tomorrow. I think it's wrong. But like, you basically put a target on your back for like ever if you're saying and you're telling the police that you're involved in or like doing anything, or like, what do you think they're going to do with that information eventually? They're going to use it to turn you into a snitch. Okay? So as much as I respect Steve, there ain't no fucking way that I'm telling my kid to ever talk about any of that shit. Okay? Because it would just be as simple as this. Yeah, of course, it's a college campus. Of course, there's drugs. Okay. Are you asking me if I bought drugs out of this house? No, I didn't. Did I see people doing drugs in this house? Oh, fuck yeah. All the time. But who would ever tell their kid to admit to buying or selling drugs? Are you kidding me? I hope to God you would never tell your kid to fucking do that. Do not ever tell your kid to do that. Never. Tell them to go fucking solve their own goddamn cases. You know, there's no one's obstructing any justice here. Okay. But if you need them to start telling about the drugs, then you think that that's involved. Then you think that that's part of this. Okay. And I would tell all those kids to shut the fuck up. No. Like, in college, people experiment all the time. And for anybody to have their life altered because some cop wants to get a hard on about you, no, you're not doing that. There's a difference between kids that are in college that are experimenting, or, you know, hey, I'm just having my fun here, whatever. And these fucking people like the Molly and the degenerates of the world. Okay, go fuck with them. Leave these kids alone. That's how I feel. So, anyways, see you on the next one tomorrow. We'll be back at it. We will do. I got more to talk about with Matthew Farwell. That's sick fuck. But I will say I think he's eligible for to get bail. Because there's some stuff that's really interesting when you talk about the law. And so do I believe that he deserves to get bail due to the absolutely, because that's why innocent people, you need to, we're going to get into all of that tomorrow though. But yes, Matthew, in my opinion, Matthew Farwell should make bail due to the law. And I think I'll be setting for a live for Idaho4 at 12:30 or 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you on the next one. Hit the thumbs up or thumbs down on the way out. I appreciate you guys, moderators. Much love. And oh, duh, hello, fucking Jack John Showalter. We have a huge interview. I have it set for tomorrow night, and I'm debating if I should be doing it for a Friday night live. So let me know if you guys prefer the Friday night. But right now I was thinking that it would be ripping on at 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So, but if you'd rather have a Friday night live, or we've been waiting for this, and then next week I have another one. So these are really big. This is what they thought. They were honing in on this dude. So what do we think? Let me know. All right. See you on the next one.